the preliminary numbers came out, and the next day Pew was out with some analysis. What does it look like for Latino elected officials, people who are in the work of running for political office, after a remap based on this new nose count?
Well, it certainly looks like what we're going to see is places where there are larger Latino populations are states that also have gained seats in this reapportionment. And in many cases, even in states that did gain seats but don't necessarily have large Latino populations, growth in the Hispanic population contributed a large part, oftentimes half, if not more than half, of the population growth in some of those states. So what we're likely to see is that there's going to be more congressional districts which have greater Latino representation, and that may present an opportunity for Latino elected officials.
Give us an example of a place with greater opportunity.
Well, if you take a look at Texas, Texas gained 4 seats overall, and there Hispanics contributed to about 63% of the population growth in Texas, at least using 2009 ACS data. That's about an additional 2.5 million Latinos additional 2.5 million Latinos in Texas compared to 2000. So Texas is one place where we might see some of these opportunities.
Gerry, has this always been something filled with conflict and political elbows out and putting neighborhoods on one side of a line or another? I mean, couldn't we just draw grids across the state with 20 seats and make 20 roughly similarly sized boxes and say, okay, those are the districts?
Well, you certainly could do that, but the problem is that you have a number of constraints on people who draw districts. You have various criteria that sometimes have to be followed under state law. There are federal legal requirements regarding the Voting Rights Act and empowering racial and language minority persons. And sometimes people need to remember that redistricting is the most political thing that a legislature does. It is all about moving population around for political purposes largely, and it has become a fine art with the advent of new computer software able to draw districts with scalpel-like precision, where you can actually look at computerized maps and see where people not only live, not only incumbents, potential candidates, as well as how the voters vote in a particular block on the map. And you can move those blocks from one district to another and maybe move a potential opponent out of your district. This is done all the time.
So if we look at a state that's losing a seat, like Illinois, you might want to protect somebody who's an incumbent and create a district that's easier for them to win in, or draw somebody out of the map totally, or have 2 incumbents run against each other in a new resulting district?
Yes, you do that. People do that all the time, and you have to remember that if your party is in control of the legislature, then you have really a lot more control over which incumbent is going to be out and which ones are going to be protected. If a state is losing a district and nobody is retiring, somebody's going to have to go, meaning that they're going to get put into a district with somebody else, and then they'll have to fight it out. But for the most part, states that are under unified control of one political party really get to call the shots, and the party that's not in power has to probably challenge it in court if they're going to try to bring about some fairness for their side.
Do a lot of these cases end up in court, Gloria?
Well, there's been a few. Not every case ends up in court, but there are quite a few cases, especially communities that are protected under the Voting Rights Act. I think looking at earlier it was said that redistricting is done at all levels of government, but if we can look at the congressional and the federal example, is looking at Texas 23 along the border was represented the past 3 or 4 congressional cycles, represented by Congressman Bonilla and Congressman Rodriguez and now Congressman Canseco. And so that district, as it currently looks, was due to a challenge to the redistricting that occurred after the 2000 census. So it happens. Some areas we wish probably that we could do a lot more legal protections, but They are evaluated because overall it's not about incumbent protection and it's not about protecting the sanctity for a party. It's to make sure that these districts are inclusive and represent the communities that reside them and that these communities are not divided. And so the minute that those protections are eliminated on behalf of the community, that is when the protections need, the lawsuits and the legal defenses need to kick in.
We're going to talk more about community representation and the effect of the Voting Rights Act later in the program.